This is the new YongNuo 25mm f1.7 lens. It is a micro four thirds lens that has autofocus support, and the price is also very affordable. But with so many 25mm lenses that is available for micro four thirds shooters, is there any reason why you want to choose this lens instead? Let's find out in this video. Good morning everyone, Won here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to have a look at this YongNuo 25mm f1.7 lens. 25mm is a very popular focal length for micro four thirds cameras because it gives you 50mm equivalent focal length. So it is a good everyday lens and you can use it to shoot a bit of everything. So for micro four thirds shooters, there are many 25mm lenses that is available. Two of the most popular ones are the Panasonic 25mm f1.7 and the Olympus 25mm f1.8. This YongNuo lens has very similar but not exactly identical specs compared to the Panasonic and the Olympus lens, and the price of this lens is only $115 when I'm working on this review. So it's quite a bit cheaper even if you compare to the very affordable Panasonic 25mm f1.7 lens, and it is much cheaper than the Olympus 25mm f1.8 lens. So in this review, I'm going to do some comparison with the Panasonic 25mm f1.7 lens and see whether this YongNuo lens could be a good alternative for someone who wants a fast standard prime lens. This 25mm YongNuo lens is a pretty compact lens. The size is only slightly taller than the Panasonic 25mm lens. The lens weighs around 150 grams, so it is also a pretty lightweight lens as well. The lens does feel pretty plasticky, which the Panasonic lens also is because both of these lenses are mostly made of plastic. But maybe because of the plastic that they use on this YongNuo lens, the lens just feel a little bit more plasticky even compared to the Panasonic lens, and I would probably say it is one of the most plasticky feeling lens that I've used for a long time. But despite the plasticky construction, it does have a metal lens mount, and there is no weather seal as you probably expected for a budget lens, and the lens has a 52mm front filter thread. The lens doesn't come with any lens hood, which is something that I really wish YongNuo would have included with this lens, but I will talk about that a little bit more later on in this video. One thing I quite like is the font and also the orange color that YongNuo used on this lens, and also the letters 25 f1.7 is engraved instead of just printed on it, unlike the Panasonic lens. So this is probably a personal thing, but overall I think the lens looks quite good in this way, and it does help YongNuo to create a brand name. So next time when people see another lens or product that has the similar fonts or color choice, they will know it is a YongNuo product. On the side of the lens, there is a AF/MF switch for you to choose between autofocus and manual focus mode. The size of the switch is pretty large, and it is quite easy for you to switch between the autofocus and manual focus mode. YongNuo is an official member of the Micro Four Thirds group, and they have tested this lens with a range of different Micro Four Thirds cameras. But with so many micro four thirds camera that is available in the market, and not just from Panasonic and Olympus, but there are also a few other brands as well. So they can't test it with every single micro four thirds camera that ever existed. So check their website and see if the camera that you use is listed there. If it's not listed there, it doesn't mean it wouldn't work, but it just means they haven't tested with your camera. So there is a chance that it may not be fully working properly with your camera. One of the things that really interested me about this lens is that it has autofocus support. I'm quite curious about its autofocus performance because the earlier YongNuo micro four thirds lens seems to struggle a little bit when it comes to autofocus. This YongNuo 25mm lens uses a STM stepping autofocus motor, and I'm glad to report that the autofocus performance is actually really good. I have tested this lens on a Panasonic G85 with the 1.5 firmware and also a Panasonic G9 with the 2.4 firmware. With both cameras, the autofocus works very well. All the different autofocus modes works pretty much perfectly. Even human detection or animal detection works very fine as well, so no problem at all. I don't have any autofocus accuracy issue, and the autofocus speed when taking photo is also very good. I was swapping between this lens and the Panasonic 25mm lens, and I can't really tell if there's any noticeable difference in terms of the autofocus speed between these two lenses. In terms of autofocus noise, this YongNuo lens is also very quiet, and surprisingly, it is actually a little bit more quiet than the Panasonic lens. With the Panasonic lens, especially when you are shooting in AFC mode, you can hear a bit of autofocus noise when it's trying to find the target. The autofocus noise is not loud with the Panasonic lens, but if you are shooting in a very quiet places like this room, you can definitely hear that. But with this YongNuo lens, I almost can't hear any autofocus noise at all. And as usual, I will talk about the video continuous autofocus performance later on in the video filming session. Another big selling point about this YongNuo lens is the close focus capability. This lens can focus as close as 20 centimeters, which is just under 8 inches, and that would give you the maximum magnification of 0.2 times or 0.4 times full frame equivalent, which is really not bad at all. In comparison, the Panasonic 25mm lens, the minimum focus distance is 25 centimeters, so that is approximately 20% further away compared to this YongNuo lens, and that would give you the maximum magnification of 0.15. The Olympus 25mm f1.8 lens, which I don't have with me, that lens has the maximum magnification of 0.12 times. So the YongNuo lens maximum magnification is quite a bit higher than both of the Panasonic and the Olympus lenses. If you are someone who like to take some close-up photos quite regularly, then this YongNuo lens will be a really good choice for you. Okay, now let's talk about the image sharpness and look at the center first. At f1.7, this YongNuo lens center sharpness is pretty good, it's pretty sharp, and the image quality overall is also pretty decent. Stop down to f2.8, then the center sharpness would become excellent. Compared with the Panasonic lens is a little bit sharper at f1.7, but when both of these lenses are stopped down to f2.8, then there is virtually no difference. Okay, now let's have a look at the corner. With the YongNuo lens at f1.7, the corner is very acceptable, but if you stop down to f2.8, then the corner sharpness will improve quite a bit. Just like the center, the Panasonic lens is also slightly sharper at the corner at f1.7. But once again, both lenses, when you stop them down to f2.8, then there is almost no difference in terms of corner sharpness. Overall, the Panasonic lens is definitely slightly sharper at the maximum aperture, but the YongNuo lens sharpness is actually not bad at all. Chromatic aberration control is pretty average with this YongNuo lens. There is quite a bit of chromatic aberration in the high contrast area. Look at this photo and you can see there is quite a bit of purple fringing. Look at this photo that's shot with the Panasonic lens. There is also some fringing, this time is in green, but the amount of color fringing is less than what you got from the YongNuo lens. Now let's have a look at these local test photos. Look at a photo like this. I would say both lenses are pretty good. There is very minimal amount of color fringing. But if we zoom in and look at the photo at 100% zoom, now you can see the YongNuo has quite a bit more local than the Panasonic lens. Let's have a look at this brick wall test photo. The YongNuo has a small amount of barrel distortion, but it is not too bad and it can be easily corrected in post-processing. The Panasonic lens has excellent distortion control because I really don't see any noticeable distortion. When comparing these two real test photos, I do notice that the YongNuo has a slightly wider field of view compared to the Panasonic lens. In terms of vignetting, let's have a look at these test photos that I shot with both the YongNuo and the Panasonic lens. At f1.7, both lenses have very minimal amount of vignetting. The YongNuo may have slightly more vignetting than the Panasonic lens, but unless you are planning to shoot with a plain background, you probably won't even notice the vignetting, as both lenses have very good vignetting control. And once you stop down the lens to f2.8, then vignetting is really not noticeable at all. One interesting thing about this test photo is I shot all these test photos with the same white balance settings, but the photo from the YongNuo lens seems to be a little bit cooler, while the photo from the Panasonic lens seems to be a little bit warmer and a little bit more red. When shooting at the maximum aperture f1.7, the bokeh from the YongNuo lens is very nice with a little bit of swirly bokeh at the corner of the photo. The transition of the bokeh is very smooth and it does not look nervous at all. Even when I stop down the lens, the bokeh still remains very round and doesn't look distracting. When compared with the Panasonic lens, at first I thought the bokeh from both lenses looks almost identical, but when I look a little bit closer and zoom in the photo a little bit more, then I can see the YongNuo lens bokeh looks a little bit more creamy and just a little bit more softer compared to the Panasonic lens. The difference is not huge at all, but I think the bokeh from the YongNuo lens is slightly more beautiful than the Panasonic. The lens flare control with the YongNuo lens is reasonably good and almost as good as the Panasonic lens. Usually I don't see much lens flare at all even when shooting into the sun. The amount of lens flare is kept at a very acceptable level. However, I noticed if the sun or any very strong light source is just outside the frame, then there could be a bit of lens flare and also drop in contrast in the opposite side of the photo. This is partially due to the fact that there's no lens hood that is supplied with this YongNuo lens. The good news is, if I use my hand to block the sun, then it would dramatically reduce the amount of lens flare and also improve the contrast. But I really wish YongNuo would have included a lens hood with this lens, as it can just improve the lens flare performance dramatically. Of course, you can always buy an aftermarket lens hood that just screw onto the filter thread, and they are reasonably cheap as well. So I would highly recommend you to get a lens hood if you are buying this YongNuo lens. If you love SUNSTARS, unfortunately both the YongNuo and the Panasonic lens are not really good for you. You have to stop down the lens quite a lot to at least around f11, then you start to see some SUNSTARs. The SUNSTAR doesn't look really that nice to me, and even when I stop down to f22, the SUNSTARs from both of these lenses is just okay in my opinion. But interestingly, the SUNSTAR from both lenses actually look very similar. I have to look at the photo. I actually check them a few times to make sure I'm not looking at the photos from one single lens, and in fact they are from two different lenses. For filmmakers or anyone who want to shoot a bit of video, the continuous autofocus performance when shooting video with this YongNuo lens is quite decent. I shot this test footage with a Panasonic G9 running the firmware 2.4, and I was using the human detection and shooting it at f1.7 aperture. The overall focus tracking result is really not bad at all. Probably because it doesn't support DFD, so the camera would still hunt a little bit sometimes when it's trying to follow the subject's movement, but it can track and follow the target very well even I was moving quite quickly. And in terms of focus briefing, the YongNuo has some small amount of focus briefing. In comparison, the Panasonic lens does have a little bit less focus briefing, and the focus transition with the Panasonic lens is also slightly smoother with a little bit less hunting compared to the YongNuo lens. Having said that, I'm very impressed by how well this YongNuo lens performed when doing the continuous autofocus on a Panasonic body. Big thumbs up to the development team at YongNuo. Consider how bad their earlier Micro Four Thirds lens autofocus performance was. It was just not that long ago, and now with this latest YongNuo 25mm lens, the autofocus performance is almost the same as a native Panasonic lens. As a budget 25mm Micro Four Thirds lens, I think the overall performance of this YongNuo is just not bad at all. The image quality is pretty decent, even though the slightly more expensive Panasonic lens does have slightly better image quality, but the difference is not really that big, especially if you are taking real-world photos. The YongNuo does also have the advantage of better close-up shooting capability and a little bit smoother bokeh. But I think the most important thing is YongNuo seems to have made some significant improvement to their lens autofocus performance. The autofocus performance of this lens is really good, almost as good as the Panasonic lens on a Panasonic body. No matter I'm shooting in a single autofocus mode or continuous autofocus mode, shooting photo or video, I am surprised its autofocus is actually a little bit more quiet than the Panasonic lens. That makes me really looking forward to some more YongNuo lens in the future. While I don't really think anyone will be selling their Panasonic or Olympus 25mm lens to get this YongNuo lens, but if you are looking at buying your first 25mm lens and don't want to spend a lot of money, this YongNuo lens is definitely worth considering. So I guess the decision is, do you want to pay a little bit more to get the Panasonic or a lot more to get the Olympus, or save quite a bit of money to get this YongNuo lens instead? I'll be interested to hear what your thoughts are and which one of these 25mm lens will you pick. And is there any other lenses that you want YongNuo to create for your Micro Four Thirds camera in the future?